Well, then, in my opinion, the state has failed to establish a compelling basis for its motion, and I will grant bail.
Thank you.
Are you kidding me? You see, this is what I'm talking about. You were about to let me go. Because apparently, I just killed 2 people. How misguided are you? I feed you a couple of bullshit legal precedents, and there you go. You jump on it like a bitch and eat.
More time.
Any idea what justice
You
is?
are-
Whatever happened to the people?
Bail denied!
The movie opens on a quiet night in the suburbs outside Philadelphia. Inside a modest house, Clyde Shelton is in his house, tinkering with electronics. His little girl sits nearby, making her dad a bracelet. He suddenly hears a knock on the front door. Clyde tells his wife he got it. When he opens the door, 2 burglars named Clarence Darby and his accomplice, Rupert Ames, break inside the house. The pair beats Clyde down and ties him up, driving a knife in his stomach.
You can't fight fate.
His wife emerges from inside the house and is immediately attacked too. Darby shoves a knife into her and sexually assaults her in front of Clyde. When the daughter walks in, confused about the situation, Clyde tries to scream through his duct-taped mouth.
Kids like me.
But he is left a bleeding witness to his own wife and daughter being abused and killed. Months pass, and in the city, one of Philadelphia's top prosecutors, Nick Rice, is walking with his boss towards their office. Nick is a man driven by his reputation for winning more than 90% of his cases, and he wants to increase that number. Pulling him away from a discussion, Nick's boss, Jonas Cantrell, asks him about the case against the Shelton wife and daughter murderers. He urges Nick to be cautious with his judgment, but Nick tells himself justice is the same thing as a guaranteed win. His view is blunt. The system is imperfect, maybe broken, but his job inside it is to deliver results he can count. It seems that Nick has managed to secure a deal with Darby, so he talks to Clyde, who has physically recovered from the attack, but not mentally. Nick says that in exchange for a confession to third-degree murder and testimony that pins the sexual assault and orchestration on Ames, Darby will only get about 5 years in prison. However, Ames will very surely be given a death sentence. Clyde hates the deal because he's seen with his own eyes that Darby is the main criminal, while Ames is only his sidekick. Nick insists that a trial could backfire, the evidence might not hold, and Clyde's eyewitness testimony might be dismissed because he passed out during the attack. Both perpetrators could walk, but this deal is the closest thing to justice the system can deliver for sure. The day comes for Nick to accept Darby's deal in front of a judge. Despite taking the deal, Nick is disgusted by Darby's behavior and the crimes that he had committed.
Are you married?
Outside the courthouse, Clyde watches from the crowd as Nick shakes Darby's hand for the cameras.
I just wanted to say thanks for being in my corner.
At home, Nick and his wife are expecting a daughter, which is why he finds Darby revolting and the deal distasteful. But he convinces himself that this is how the game is played. 10 years go by, and the Rice family is livelier with their daughter growing up to be a talented child. She has a cello recital that day, but Nick cannot join her as he plans to watch Ames's scheduled execution at the state prison. He's joined by Sarah Lowell, a promising junior prosecutor, and a line of solemn officials. When asked for last words, Ames insists he didn't do the worst of the crime and that the state is killing the wrong person.
What I did that night was wrong, but I swear to God, I didn't kill those people.
Then the chemicals flow. What should be a quiet, clinical passing turns into a horror show. The inmate convulses and seizes, racked with unimaginable pain while the witnesses stare, helpless and stunned. Something has gone terribly wrong. The investigation starts immediately. A prison inspector discovers that the labels on the execution chemicals have been tampered with, and the lethal chemical itself was altered. The sedatives were swapped for a neurotoxin that immobilizes the victim but keeps them aware of the pain. When Nick examines one of the vials, he notices a scratched message, "Can't fight fate." It's a phrase Darby used to say, and someone is pointing them toward Darby.
Can't fight fate. I can't remember his name.
Nick teams up with Detective Dunnigan from the FBI to raid Darby's place. Inside his grimy living room, Darby watches a news report about Ames's execution when his phone rings. An unlisted number calls him and tells him the police are on the way. The disguised voice gives him instructions to run away. Darby sprints to the roof with a revolver and starts firing as the first squad cars wheel in. The voice on the phone directs him to ditch the gun, cross the roof line, drop to the alley, slide into a police cruiser where an officer lies unconscious from a taser hit. Darby follows every step because he has no better option. He forces the officer to drive out to a desolate stretch on the edge of the city. There, he aims a gun at the officer and orders him out of the car, ready to kill. The phone rings again. Both the cop and the caller turn out to be Clyde Shelton, revealing himself to Darby.
You know why I'll never see my wife and little girl again? Because you took them from me.
Darby reflexively yanks the trigger, but the gun is blank. When he pulled the trigger, needles shot out of the grip, delivering tetrodotoxin into Darby's bloodstream. Darby can still see, still think, still feel, but he just can't move. Clyde drags Darby into a nearby warehouse. The space looks like a medical theater designed by a sadist, full of restraints, plastic sheeting, and recording equipment. Clyde straps Darby to a modified bed and explains what's about to happen to him. He makes sure Darby understands he won't pass out, that the poison keeps him conscious for everything. He quotes Darby once again, "You can't fight fate."
I know what it feels like to be helpless. Just like when I watched you slaughter my whole family.
Now they get to watch you suffer.
Then begins the methodical, recorded dismemberment of the man who destroyed his family. After he's done, Clyde returns the keys to the officer he tied in the trunk of the cop car before leaving in his own vehicle. The next morning, Nick is going through Darby's files with Sarah when he tells her about his intuition. He doesn't think that Darby is the perpetrator for Ames's tragic death because Darby is a violent person with little wit. By morning, detectives investigate the warehouse where they find the gruesome remains of Darby's body. Dunnigan calls Nick, confirming that his intuition was right. While rushing to the scene, Sarah digs through the DA's archives for anything on Clyde Shelton that might explain the sophistication they're seeing. He had a sizable amount of money from his many patented inventions, and he used it all up to buy properties for an unknown strategy.
He holds 24 patents that made him some money.
Search them all, Sarah, see what you find.
At a small country house on the outskirts, Clyde hears the sirens in the distance and knows the time has come. He undresses, sets down his tools, and waits for the SWAT team to punch through his door. He surrenders without any resistance, but he looks at Nick with a piercing gaze as he gets escorted into the police car. Inside the house, Dunnigan wonders why an engineer like Clyde would have so many law books. Nick and Sarah find an old newspaper clipping showing Nick and Darby shaking hands in front of the courthouse 10 years ago. In interrogation, Clyde sits quietly, seeming unfazed. Nick enters, kills the camera for a moment, and privately congratulates Clyde for removing a scum like Darby from this world.
What I'm about to tell you, I don't want anybody else to hear. And what you did, bravo. You're not gonna see a tear shed from me or anybody in my office. The world is better without Darby and Ames. With that being said, I have a job to do.
Then he flips back to the official posture and angles for a confession. Clyde seems to cooperate and gives him a confession, but it's intentionally inconclusive to mirror the circumstances of the case against Darby 10 years ago. He wants Nick to make a deal with him for a mattress in exchange for a real confession that's admissible for court. To make another deal with a murderer like he did with Clyde. He frames it like a lesson, like he's teaching Nick how deals feel to the people who choke them down.
You give me my bed, you get your confession.
Fuck no.
Nick refuses to agree to Clyde's demands, but Jonas tells him off because they have no conclusive evidence that Clyde is truly the killer if they want to convict him in court.
We need a confession and a mattress for a murder confession. That's a pretty good deal.
There's an urgent call from your office.
Listen to me, the things on this video. Nick, I have never seen anything like it. Come home soon, please.
Kelly, did you see his face?
No.
Tell her that it's not real.
Okay.
And that I love her. This motherfucker sent a DVD to my house of him killing Darby. Make the deal.
Nice bed. It's a single.
At the preliminary hearing, Clyde represents himself and turns the courtroom into a lecture hall. He says that he's a law-abiding citizen and there's no conclusive proof about his involvement in the murders. He cites case law, mirrors old rulings, and persuades the judge to grant bail, then promptly skewers her for considering it at all. He calls out the hypocrisy of a system ready to release a confessed murderer because the argument was shiny enough.
Well, then, in my opinion, the state has failed to establish a compelling basis for its motion, and I will grant bail.
Thank you.
Are you kidding me? You see, this is what I'm talking about. You were about to let me go Because apparently, I just killed 2 people. How misguided are you? I feed you a couple of bullshit legal precedents, and there you go. You jump on it like a bitch and eat.
More
Any
time.
idea what justice
You are-
is? Whatever happened to the people?
Bail denied.
The judge, stung by the reflection, reverses course and locks him back up with no bail.
Later, Nick.
That's what you're building your defense on? Insanity?
I saw a movie today.
You did?
My daughter. I'm gonna give you one more chance, Clyde. And don't test me, because I will run you over.
Back in the prison, Clyde gets his mattress and immediately confesses to both murders of Ames and Darby. However, his grand plan hasn't finished. He tells Nick that Darby's attorney from his case 10 years ago, who has been missing for 3 days, is in danger. If Nick wants that man found alive, he'll deliver a steak lunch from Del Frisco and also Clyde's iPod, all by precisely 1 p.m.
Who the fuck is Bill Reynolds?
Darby's attorney.
Well, looks like I got something to bargain with after all, Nick. Just bring me my meal and my music at 1 o'clock exactly.
The warden, insulted by the idea of indulging a killer, decides to delay the delivery by a few minutes to remind everyone who's in charge, despite Nick's insistence that the timing matters. The food arrives 8 minutes late, but Clyde still provides them coordinates. A team is sent to the coordinates location where they find a coffin buried underground. Inside, there's the attorney and a tank that would have held just enough air for him to survive if the lunch had been on time. It's another lesson by Clyde that petty authority and the systemic nature often can be literally fatal. In prison, Clyde offers his threatening cellmate his lunch before murdering him in cold blood using the steak's bone. This incident sends him into an isolation cell.
Well, what principle was at work when you tortured and killed those people?
That everyone must be held accountable for their actions.
You think your wife and daughter would feel good?
My wife and daughter can't feel anything. They're dead.
Meanwhile, Sarah's research surfaces information that Clyde had a contract history with the Department of Defense. Jonas sets up a discreet meeting with a CIA liaison who used to work with him off books. What the liaison reveals is terrifying. Clyde wasn't a trigger puller, he was the mind behind missions. He designed operations to kill the unkillable, break into the unbreakable, and make the impossible look like bad luck. If you're dealing with Clyde, the operative tells them, assume the plan you think you foiled is the plan he wanted you to find. If Clyde has decided you're going to die, the only unanswered question is when.
Anybody who had anything to do with that case, he's going to be coming after you.
You saying we can't stop it?
Walk into his cell and put a bullet in his head.
Shaken, Nick and Jonas push a judge to approve extended solitary for Clyde, for longer than policy allows. The judge agrees to their idea and signs the order that would extend Clyde's solitary stay. Right then, her office phone rings. When she answers, the phone blows up in her hand and kills her. Nick and Jonas are shell-shocked, and they back away. They still don't know how anyone could plant an undetected bomb in her phone without a trace. Nick drags himself to the prison and confronts Clyde. He accuses him of running a revenge campaign. Clyde insists revenge is too small a word.
That's what you think this is about? Vengeance?
He says that he's staging a lesson on how a justice system that rewards deals over truth invites horror and calls it expedience. He sets a deadline for the final exam, drop all charges and release him by 6 a.m. or everyone connected to the case will die. Nick reacts by moving the entire DA staff into the prison to work under the illusion of safety. He and Sarah sit in a cramped room, both trying to figure out who is helping Clyde with his plans while he's locked up, but to no avail. They then move to arguing ethics and outcomes, about how to live with the decisions that they make in court and in the justice system.
This is a job, Sarah. We have to make choices.
And don't get me wrong, I love working for you. But I just want to make sure that I gave up those things for more than just a high conviction rate.
The clock strikes 6 a.m. As nothing happens, everyone in the building exhales. Nick makes the call to send everyone home for some well-needed rest. Then, he and Jonas walk into the parking lot to debrief and share a weary, relieved laugh that they might be turning a corner. Suddenly, the car alarms begin to turn on, and one after another, every DA staffer's car, including Sarah's, ignite in flames from the planted bombs. The concussions roll through the lot like thunder. The air fills with glass and heat and screams. In the charred aftermath, Nick sits on a curb holding his head. Now, he is certain that Clyde doesn't need to be on the street to reach you. The mayor's patience snaps. She summons Nick and Jonas and lays the weight of the city on them. Fix this fast, or lose your jobs, your reputations, and maybe more. So, Nick sends away his family to evacuate for their safety before he visits Clyde in the prison again. Clyde says that Nick should have taken the deal, but Nick immediately beats him up. However, Clyde says he's not done yet.
I'm just getting warmed up. This is Von Clausewitz shit. Total fucking war.
Dunnigan wants to shoot Clyde dead right there and then, but Nick stops him.
I'm gonna bring the whole fucking diseased, corrupt temple down on your head.
At Sarah's funeral, Jonas wonders if the innocent deaths are their fault for how they handled the case 10 years ago. Nick says that he thinks it's specifically Nick's own fault, but Jonas tries to console him.
I really wanted to change the system. And then you realize it's the system that you're trying to change. It changed you.
The hard part isn't making the decision. It's living with it.
The two leave the cemetery in a convoy of black cars. A mile away, someone powers up a compact military-grade machine gun stashed in a van. The first attack comes in a barrage of bullets, turning the cemetery into chaos. Nick's driver swerves them out of the kill zone and hits the gas. By the end of the day, the mayor names Nick the new head district attorney. Nick dives into Sarah's research on Clyde, and a pattern jumps out. Clyde quietly bought an odd handful of industrial parcels over the last decade. He sends the list to Dunnigan to cross-reference against utility maps and transit lines. The dots connect when one of the properties is a forgotten garage right next to the prison. They trespass inside and step into what looks like an empty bay. Behind a false wall, they uncover a tunnel mouth that intersects the old railroad service line and, from there, a concealed passage leading directly under the solitary wing. Inside the hideaway are the tools of every crime they failed to imagine, even the many disguises that he wore to infiltrate places. Dunnigan follows the tunnel to a hatch that opens right beneath Clyde's cell. He lifts it slowly, but the bed above is empty. Clyde has sneaked out of his cell to presumably run another one of his crimes. The evidence on the bench tells Nick that City Hall is holding a leadership meeting that night, and Clyde plans to turn it into a funeral.
She's got cameras everywhere.
He's at City Hall.
The team hurries downtown. Meanwhile, Clyde is already in the City Hall building, disguised as a janitor moving among the staff and workers. He wheels a cart past security and disappears into the service corridors. Inside his mop bucket is a phone-triggered bomb encased in a plain suitcase. He plants it in a crawl space directly beneath the room where the mayor and her senior officials will sit, then tidies the area like nothing happened. He walks out the way he came in, waiting for the moment it blows up. Nick, Dunnigan, and another detective sweep the building, and thankfully, they find the bomb. The third man kneels over it and says that the bomb is a very complex kind that is hard to defuse and can be detonated remotely from a cell phone call. They decide not to worry the mayor with a panicked evacuation. They assume, correctly, that Clyde is watching through one of the dozens of tiny cameras he's tucked around the structure and will blow the charge if he senses that they're onto him. Meanwhile, Clyde slips back through the hidden tunnel and into solitary, expecting to find his cell exactly as he left it. Instead, Nick is waiting in the dark with a gun. The two men talk in the quiet of the space below the prison. Nick quotes Jonas about living with your choices, while Clyde smiles at the irony and asks for the inevitable. He wants one last deal. This time, Nick says no. He tells Clyde the lesson finally landed, that cutting corners for a guaranteed outcome is still a cut, and somebody always bleeds.
I don't make deals with murderers anymore, Clyde.
Finally. Well done. Bravo.
Clyde softens for a breath. He's glad Nick learned something, and now he has nothing left to live for. He reaches for the phone that will end the night his way, in a grand explosion of city council. Nick tells him the choice will define him forever, that even in a life emptied by grief, the next decision is still a decision you have to carry. The two exchange apologies, each truly sorry for what they had done. And then Clyde dials. The detonation signal was sent, but no explosion happens in City Hall.
Like I said, Clyde, it's a decision you have to live with for the rest of your life. Which I figure by now is about 25 more seconds.
While Clyde was away, Nick's team moved the bomb. The phone-triggered suitcase now sits under Clyde's own bed. Clyde tries to hide in his secret tunnel, but Dunnigan seals the door from the other side. While the two walk away, Clyde seems to have accepted his fate. The room glows white, and the blast consumes the whole solitary block. Peace has finally returned to the city, and especially to Nick's life. The movie ends with his daughter completing her cello recital as